Unlock the secrets of franchising success with the Franchise Life podcast. Hosted by Stacie Shannon. Join us for expert insights, success stories, and practical tips every week. Subscribe now and take your franchise journey to the next level.
Hello and welcome to the Franchise Life. Today, I have Ryan Logan from Franchise Fastlane and 5-Star Bath Solutions with me. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me. Very, very excited to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So this is a brand I am an absolute fan of. I worked with a gentleman in 2022. His name is Britt Myers. And at the time, he lives in North Carolina. There was a resale that I presented to him in that area. Plus, when he ultimately decided to go with 5-Star Bath Solutions, he purchased a new territory that was adjacent to the resale. So how is my friend Brett doing these days?
He's doing really well. I always joke with Britt that, he's got a full-time job at B of A as a VP, I believe it is procurement. He's got 5 kids, 2 dogs, and he's running a $7 million business just for fun. So this is a guy that's found an extra 2 or 3 hours in every single day. So he's found a secret.
Oh my gosh, $7 million. Do you know how many territories that comprises today?
I think all in, he's probably at 2 or 3.
Okay.
Got some operational territory. But yeah, he's just somebody that we look to. He's now on the field advisory council of the company. So he's in a very select group. And he is one of my strongest, most appreciated validators for the brand.
I love hearing that. I love a good success story. All right. So 5-Star Bath Solutions. This is a brand that, it's been around for a while. It first started in 1996. You guys started franchising in 2002, and you currently have over 365 territories nationwide. That is some pretty phenomenal growth.
I think so. A couple points I make on that. It's been very intentional and responsible growth. Even though we started franchising, quite a while ago, a Franchise Fastlane was only brought in about 2.5 years ago. And the only reason we took the brand, certainly it's backed by 5-Star Franchising, but the leadership team, led by Dean Hartley, was perfectly suited and prepared to intentionally and responsibly scale this brand. I mean, you can't scale that exponentially over a short period of time without having a lot of core beliefs, a lot of systems, processes, and best practices. And, day after day, validation call after validation call, I'm hearing good stories. And I think we're about 97% sold to open. So with that kind of growth, that kind of open ratio has been really, really nice to see.
That's impressive. So before we dive into 5-Star Bath Solutions, can you give us the highlights? You mentioned 5-star franchising, and I don't want that to go without notice, because there's a lot of value that 5-star franchising does bring to its portfolio of brands. So can you just give us the quick highlights of what 5-star franchising is?
Yeah, 5-Star Franchising is our parent company out in Utah. They're a portfolio company whose sole purpose is really to take over all the home services within the home. And we're owned by private equity. We're owned by Princeton Private Equity. So we've got fantastic partners that provide us enough resources to go out and find the best of the best in terms of people, but also technology. And I think that's really one of the things that separates 5-Star Bath is our technology. And we couldn't do that without the support mechanisms of 5-Star Franchising, as well as one of their portfolio companies called ProNexus, who really is just the heart of what we call the executive model, handling all calls and appointment setting. I mean, they're like candy to a baby to some of our executive owners.
I love that, candy to a baby. Well, for a home service brand like this, it's all about lead generation, right? And presence within the marketplace. So I do want to touch on that in a little bit more, but give us the lowdown on what 5-Star Bath Solutions is.
5-Star Bath Solutions is a technology company that just happens to do bathrooms. And I say that not in jest. I think one of the things that separates us in a very overcrowded marketplace is the fact that we're able to decommoditize this home services experience. I'm sure that your listeners have all had a contractor come into their house, and they know how painful that is, right? It's a cup of coffee, smelling like last night's bad decisions. They're wandering around your house. This is a very different experience. This is a technology-driven, 3-dimensional I've observed it myself in training, and I watched somebody go from, oh, I'm going to get 42 quotes before I make a decision when we walked in the house, to 45 minutes later saying, when can you come in and give me my bathroom? And I think that's because of, the core belief of us is to really transmit value, to decommoditize the process and make it about the experience. And I think the relationships and the success, not only in our growth, but also in our FDD, as empirically said, that's been a great business model for us.
So you said this is a technology company that just happens to be in this space. So what is the technology and the value to an investor, potential investor that's looking at this brand?
Yeah, appreciate that question. I think, well, let's talk selfishly about a franchisee and investor. Most of our franchisees are executive model. So we have to have certain support mechanisms in there. Now, the best use of time for a franchisee, I like to call shaking hands and kissing babies. They're the critical thinker and the strategic advisor on the business. Their role primarily is to run the KPIs. So the first element of technology that makes a difference is we have a proprietary KPI tool that allows our franchisees to see in real time all the important metrics to their business, but then fully transparently be able to compare that to every other franchisee in the system. So what that creates is a mastermind sort of environment where everybody's always talking and coming up with the best practice. It's one of those 1 + 1 = 100 kind of scenarios. Now, on the other side of that coin, how does our tech affect us in the marketplace, and how does it add value to our potential customers? I can't go back to how powerful our 3D visualizer is. Again, thinking about somebody that's done that kind of work and come in, most people write these notes on a piece of paper and get back to you in a month. Then there's only a 10% chance, 50% chance of that, right? This is in real time. You hand the client an iPad, and they sort of disappear into their bubble where they're now building their bathroom in real time. In a world where we have AI and augmented reality, the ability to uniquely imbue tech into this creates a situation where it becomes more about emotion, less about the price. It decommoditizes it. Because if you're building it, how could you not love a bathroom you've built yourself? So again, the technology is one of those things that helps people build the bathroom in real time and then run the business on the executive model.
And you guys have purposely stayed focused on bathroom for tub and shower conversions. I mean, it begs the question with, this is a type of business that could easily translate over into kitchen remodels, right? What is behind just staying purely focused on that niche area of the bathroom?
It's an efficient system. As you enumerated early on, we're a 25-year-old company. We've had the successes, the scars, the good stories, and we don't want to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. I go to conferences all the time, and I have other brands coming to me saying, God, can we add on this and that and the other thing and bolt it on? I think there's always discussions about that, not at the 5-star bath level, but at the 5-star franchising level, a little bit higher up. But I think if Dean Hartley, our brand president, were on this call, would say, focus, follow the system, do it elegantly, get a team of high standards and get out of the way and let the system work itself. I think it's one of those things where empirically we look at success and we go, why are we gonna mess with this?
Right. Don't try to fix something that isn't broken, right? So you mentioned, Ryan, earlier that this is an overcrowded space, which I love that you said that, because there are certain industries when I present concepts to my clients that they'll say, oh my gosh, there's this type of service on every corner, right? So talk me through, what would you say to a prospect that is exploring franchise ownership and specifically focused in home services in this space about considering entering a segment that is overcrowded like this? How do you talk them through those fears?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge the fears and you have to call them out by name. And I think most of the fear that I've experienced with 5-stars, I don't know a darn thing about bathrooms. Who's going to support me? And I think that comes down to 2 elements as it relates to 5-star bath: my brand president and then validation. So let's talk about Dean Hartley for a second. I know you work with thousands of clients around the country, Stacie. So I would challenge anyone who's validating with a company to see if they get the cell phone number of the brand president when they join. And the brand president will say to them something silly like this, but very meaningful and serious. If my wife doesn't know your name within 6 weeks of you joining this company, you are not calling my cell phone enough.
Wow.
So I think as you talk about fears, what's the solution? How do we assuage that fear? And I think that kind of support early on, direct, one-on-one, intimate with the brand president is something that takes the cortisol level down with a lot of my franchisees. That access to Dean, who, by the way, when he was recruited to join Five Star Bath, said, no, I don't want the job. I don't want to be your brand president. Let me become a franchisee to make sure this actually works before I put my name behind it. So he did. He bought a franchise in Detroit. He now has a $20 million business in Detroit that he runs as a side hustle, in addition to being the president of Five Star. So he's not somebody that's sitting in an ivory tower listening to TED Talks saying, do this and the other thing. He's living it. And that kind of intimacy is massive for growth.
Wow. That is powerful.
Validation. Fear goes away when you have conversations and you're viscerally feeling certain about the brand. And my validation, I have an embarrassment of riches. You mentioned Britt Myers. I've cloned Britt Myers. I probably have 10 to 15 of those folks who just so giving and just contribution focused, community focused that, when you start validating with us, it becomes, I think, I'm biased, but I think it becomes evident that you've got a community of people that are going to be competitive with you, but are going to be supportive of you. So those two things really set us apart.
So, okay, you've mentioned, Ryan, the executive model quite often. And in franchising, that does mean different things to different brands. And it translates into, different responsibilities to a franchise owner. So what does the executive model mean to Five Star Bath? And ultimately, what does that look like in the life of a franchise owner?
Yeah, I think let's put some time to it. 25 to 30 hours a week to start, right? It's a business. You have to invest your time. You have to set your standards, make sure they're elegantly executed. So 25, 30 hours, but that's not a day with 4 or 5 hour blocks in it. What it looks like, Stacie, is an hour in the morning, getting your team ready to take on the world. You're available throughout the day via cell phone or email. Just answer or triage a question. And then at the end of the night, you sit down and you look at that KPI dashboard that we talked about, and you look at the business. You pull the levers. You act as a best use of a time as the critical thinker and strategic advisor on the business. You work directly with the team on your marketing spend, Dean on strategy, and then you just get out of the way and let your team go execute day to day. That's really what I would say. This is not scientific, but I would say 60 to 70% of my franchisees have either day jobs, other business interests, or other passions that they follow. I always caution people that if I say 20 to 30, think 35, think 37, just because there's always unconscious levels of depth that you want to jump into, and there's getting used to it. So again, back to validation. I'm a very conservative person by nature. So I would say once you start validating, my 20 to 30, 35 hours is really it's gonna bleed true, and it will slowly get closer to that 20 as time goes on.
And from a personnel standpoint and a expertise level, what does the employee model look like? So you've already set the stage of what the owner can expect in an executive model, but what does the team or the staff look like, and what types of backgrounds do they have?
Yeah, if you had 1 territory or 4,000 territories when you join Five Star, you only start with 3 to 4 people in the first year. So your first most important hire is a salesperson, which is always your first headache. We know that, so we've got support. You hire 2 installers, and then you hire an administrative support individual. So 4 people is $1 million plus business with us. It's a very, very lean business. You'll notice when you look at our item 7, the absence of certain things. There's no trucks, there's no trailers, there's no inventory. So this is a very lean business to start. So we keep the team lean as well. And the way I always phrase it is this: every employee in your company's economic interests align with our franchisees because everybody's on commission. There's no salaried luxury players with us. So back to the original numbers, that's why people, when they join, buy between 2 and 3. Because if I don't have to go out and lease 2,000 square feet or get some trucks or trailers or equipment, I can spend that money on people and marketing, which I deem, I don't know you, but those are revenue generating activities. So the staffing model is very lean, as is the acquisition cost in the item 7.
So you mentioned a couple installers. So I'm envisioning if the franchise owner does not need to go out and spend money on trucks, trailers, equipment, and so forth, are these installers subcontractors then that are bringing their own tools and materials with them?
Certainly the former, the tools. They will bring their own tools. But part of my item 7 is we have backup tools. They're like artists. They want to use their own equipment. I respect that. But yes, we utilize the trucks of the installers and we pay them a car allowance. The tax status is really unique. That's a subjective thing. When I started 3 years ago, I would say more people were 1099s. I would say more have moved over to W-2s, not for any tax reasons, because they make the same amount of money. But I think there's just a comfort level there. I've always joked that I think even if they're 1099 independent contractors on paper, between their ears, they act as salaried, loyal, dedicated employees. And I think that's true. We pay our folks a lot of money. Our salespeople make well into the 6 figures, as do our installers. We offer health benefits. 95% of the work's indoors. So staffing is kind of an embarrassment of riches, Stacie, where I like to think we flip the script a little bit. We become the hunted as opposed to the hunters for talent.
That is really interesting. What is behind? So is it up to the local franchise owner whether they want to offer the health benefits to their staff, or is it across the board? And this is kind of a 5-star franchising.
You nailed it. There it is. Yeah, it's a benefit of being part of 5-star franchising. Absolutely. We have what's called a shared services environment. I don't really talk about it much up front. But 5-star franchising brings a massive amount of resources to bear. Fractional CFOs, background checks, benefits, things that you and I in the corporate white collar world potentially take for granted. We are now able to offer these people in a unique situation, which again is just, that's why we're the destination. That's why we don't care that we're in a crowded marketplace, because we feel like not only do we bring value to our customers, but we also bring value to our employees, which reflects really a core tenet of ours, which is you just take care of your people. I feel in this day and age, it's gotten more and more rare that happens, but at 5-star franchising and Bath, we invest in our people heavily.
Which, I mean, that is what makes people stay with you, right? Is culture, benefits, how you treat people. I mean, that's really how you attract and retain a good team. Okay, well, that is really interesting. I had no idea about the benefit aspect, which is a game changer, because I do not hear, you mentioned I have access to thousands of brands, which I do, but rarely. I could probably count on one hand how many franchises I know that offer the health benefits. So that is fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about, the value. You've talked about the technology aspect, which is a game changer for 5-star Bath. But another thing that you guys promote is these are 1 to 2 day bath conversions, right? I mean, you get in, you're experts at what you do, and you get a job done. And I can tell you firsthand, I've lived through a house renovation where we gutted our kitchen, we've gutted our bathroom, and there is nothing worse than living through a long, drawn out, renovation like that, where you're dealing with the dust and people coming and going and so forth. So is it really true that you guys can go in there? And I know it depends on the extensiveness of the job, but you can do many of these jobs in a 1 to 2 or 3 day scenario.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that goes back to your other question. Who are we? What's our identity? We focus on the wet area. It's the shower, the toilet, the sink, the vanity, and the flooring. All right. Those are things that you don't need to pull permits for necessarily. And those are things where you're not moving a toilet from one side of the room to the other. We're going in, we're stripping down to the studs, we're making sure everything is clean. And then on a custom design basis that the client designs, we're building back in on the existing infrastructure. That allows us to zip in and out in 1 to 2 days. So do I have people, Stace, that do more than that and less than that? I sure do. Different business models, different price points. We support it, but the core of our business, the heart of it, is what we call that wet area. And that's what we coach everybody to stick to. And you can do that 15, 20, 30 times a month in the first year if you get your team right from the beginning.
All right. So let's talk numbers. What does your average ticket look like, Ryan? And you've thrown out some pretty impressive numbers as far as businesses. 7 million, over 15 million. So what is the potential ROI on this business? I know it's sensitive, so whatever you can share from the item 19, I'd love for you to give to us.
Sure. Our item 19 will show, for the most recent, it'll show 11 million top line with about 1.4 million in cash to the bottom line, which is about a 13% net. I'm very comfortable, and I think that'll validate very strongly. 13 to 15% is on the fully executive model is going to be very strong and very consistent. So I have no hesitation on that. Our average ticket is just over $14,000. So these are not low ticket items. They're very big ticket items. Franchisees in their first year are doing 10, 20, 30 bathrooms a month once they get operational. So once your candidates start validating and talking, they'll hear well into the 7 figures in their first year. I have no hesitation. In terms of startup cost, again, we're lean. A single territory for us is about 200 grand. You want to do a 3-pack, you're looking at about 400 grand. And most people buy between 2 and 3. So it's a lean business to start, and most people scale.
So what does your ideal candidate look like? What attributes are they bringing to the table? Any past experience and so forth?
Yeah, for us being executive, predominantly executive model, we look for people who can fundamentally be coachable, who are resourceful, who have a high sense of urgency, who have a dedication to taking care of the team. We have found a ton of success luck with engineers, people who are project managers, military, either current or veterans. I mean, those are the people that rip the cover off the ball because they zealously follow a plan. But my guy in Atlanta is a teacher. He's a second grade school teacher. So you tell me, I think there's no art. I mean, there's no science to this. It's an art. You just find the right people and you coach them up. But I think it's people who have a mindset that they're contribution driven. I mean, look, we're walking into people's bathrooms. I don't want anybody in my house, more or less my bathroom. So you have to have the right type of core beliefs to permeate through your business. And I think the right franchisee has a contribution-driven mindset where they're trying to add massive amounts of value to people. And look, if your giving hand is longer than your taking hand, eventually your business will be profitable because, word gets out on those things.
I love that. You have some great phrases. I need to steal some of them. All right. Well, any last words from you, Ryan, on 5-Star Bath and what this opportunity potentially could mean to someone looking to grow their own business?
Yeah, I think if you sit at a desk or you're remotely working a W-2 job and you find yourself staring at a screen, wondering what it's like potentially on the other side of life, certainly I would work with you to work through those critical thinking questions. But I would look for a brand that has a ton of support, that takes care of a lot of the annoying, scary things like appointment setting and taking inbound calls. Those are things that we handle. A ton of support, a lean business to start that sort of mitigates your financial risk. And you're just going to have fun doing it. I have found that by and large, now, it's not 100% certainty, but I have found that 5-Star Bath is just adding a lot of value to people's lives because it gives them permission to intentionally design a life outside of earning income. It allows them to enjoy their life. So I've been proud to be with them for 3 years. I think we've got a lot of runway. We've got a lot of opportunity to keep people growing. And again, thank you for the opportunity just to be part of the podcast and chat with you a little bit today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have so many clients that are looking for an executive type model where they can keep their corporate job, build a business on the side, either with a dream of leaving the corporate job or not, right? And so this has been very refreshing to get updated. I love hearing that Britt Myers is doing fantastic. And I hope to bring more clients your way, Ryan.
I appreciate it, Stacie. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
My pleasure. For anybody that is interested in learning more about 5-Star Bath Solutions, please feel free to reach out to me at stacie@fusionfranchising.com. Thanks and have a great day.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more on the franchise life.